You know what's worse than being lonely? Being surrounded by people and still feeling alone. I'm not here to give you a pity party. I'm here to tell you what happens when you have no friends, the lessons, the scars, and the superpowers, and you don't even realize you're building. Because this is not just a story about isolation. It's a story about finding your voice when there's no one else to echo it back. I want you to imagine something for a second. You wake up, you check your phone, and nothing. No unread texts, no notifications, no, hey, you busy, from someone who actually wants to see you. You go about your day, and it's quiet, too quiet. At first, that quiet feels like peace. No drama, no obligations, no pressure to be on for anyone. But over time, that quiet starts to feel heavier, not loud, heavy. And here's the thing, that weight isn't always obvious. It's not like you're walking around thinking, wow, I'm crushed by loneliness today. It's more subtle. It shows up when you start second guessing yourself, when you have a good moment, but no one to share it with. So you wonder if it even mattered. When something bad happens and you realize no one even knows enough about your life to ask how you're doing. That's when you start feeling it. That's when the quiet starts whispering, you're on your own. Loneliness has a funny way of making you doubt your worth. You start telling yourself stories, bad stories about why you're in this situation. Maybe you think, I'm just not interesting enough, or people just don't like me. And those thoughts, they grow. They start shaping how you see yourself, how you walk into a room, how you interact with strangers. You don't just feel invisible. You start making yourself invisible. Now, here's where it gets tricky. There's a difference between being alone and feeling alone. You can be surrounded by people, coworkers, family, people you chat with in line at the store, and still feel like no one actually sees you. You're there physically, but emotionally, you're checked out. Because deep down, you've convinced yourself nobody's looking for you anyway. And when that's the belief you carry, every little thing starts to feel personal. Someone cancels plans, it's because you're not worth keeping. Someone forgets to invite you, it's because they never really wanted you there. A conversation ends awkwardly, it's because you're bad at talking to people. This is the silent weight of isolation. It rewires how you interpret the world. Here's the truth. Though sometimes it's not even about you. Sometimes people are just busy. Sometimes life gets in the way. But loneliness doesn't let you see that. It tells you the story that hurts the most. And yet, even in the middle of all this, there's a strange kind of survival instinct that kicks in. You become resourceful. You figure out ways to fill the silence. You keep yourself busy, maybe too busy, just so you don't have to feel the empty space around you. You learn to look like you're fine. You put on the I'm good smile. You give short answers when people ask how you're doing because you're not sure they actually want to know. But here's the part we don't talk about enough. You get tired. You get tired of pretending you're okay. You get tired of being your own emotional support system every single day. And you start craving something real, not a crowd, not 100 followers, just one person who genuinely gets it. One person who says, hey, I thought of you today without you having to earn it. That craving, that's human. That's not weakness. It's a reminder that we're built for connection. And when you don't have it, you feel it. You feel it in your bones. So yes, the weight of isolation is real. And it's not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's the subtle, everyday moments that make it the heaviest, moments where you wish someone else was there to witness your life alongside you. But here's what I want you to hear tonight. Being unseen right now doesn't mean you'll be unseen forever. You know, one of the most dangerous things about being in a season of no friends is the way your mind starts filling in the blanks. You don't have all the facts, so your brain writes the story for you. And it usually writes the ugliest one it can. That's how the myths start. The first myth is the most common. If I don't have friends, there must be something wrong with me. Sounds harmless when you say it once, but repeat it enough times and it becomes the background music of your life. You start filtering everything through it. You meet someone new, and instead of thinking, cool, let's see where this goes, you think, I wonder how long until they see what's wrong with me. You carry that doubt into every interaction, and guess what? People feel it. Another myth says, if I'm alone, I must not be lovable. That one's tricky because it hides inside every rejection, every unanswered text, every canceled plan. But here's the reality. It's possible to be deeply lovable and still be alone for a time. We forget that friendship, like any relationship, has timing built into it. You can be in a season where you're simply out of sync with the people around you. That doesn't make you broken. It just makes you between chapters. And then there's the myth that says everyone else has it figured out. Too, you scroll through your feed and it looks like everyone's out at brunch, traveling in groups, laughing over cocktails. What you don't see is the picture they didn't post, the argument at the table, the moments of silence in their car ride home, the text they sent after saying, "That was fun," when they actually felt exhausted. Social media has made it way too easy to compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. These myths don't just distort how you see yourself, they distort how you see other people. You start assuming they wouldn't want to know you, so you don't try. You think they already have their group, so you don't approach. You convince yourself you're on the outside, so you stop looking for a way in. And the longer you believe those myths, the more they become your reality, not because they're true, but because you live like they are. Here's the truth you're probably not giving yourself enough credit for. Your worth has nothing to do with the number of people who happen to be around you right now. Your identity isn't on pause until someone else validates it. And the absence of friendships in this season says absolutely nothing about the kind of person you are. I've met people with dozens of friends who still feel unseen. I've met people with one deep friendship that keeps them grounded for years. And I've met people who spend long stretches of life without anyone close by and come out the other side stronger than they ever imagined. The constant in all of those stories isn't the number of connections. It's the person you become in the middle of it. What you have to remember is this loneliness tells you you're powerless. But the truth is you still get to decide who you are in the meantime. You can still develop your voice, your values, your boundaries. You can still build a life you're proud of, even if no one's clapping for it yet. And when the right people do show up, you won't be showing them a version of you shaped by desperation. You'll be showing them the real thing. The myths we tell ourselves are heavy, but they're also optional. You don't have to keep repeating them. You don't have to let them narrate your life. And the moment you start quack sessioning them is the moment you start taking back the pen, because you're not broken. You're just in between chapters. When you spend a lot of time alone, it's easy to only focus on the hard parts, the quiet, the self-doubt, the awkward moments when you realize you have no one to call on a Friday night. But what no one really tells you is that something else is happening underneath all of that, something powerful. You're building muscles you don't even know you're building. See, when you're always surrounded by people, it's easy to lean on their opinions, their preferences, their validation. You start shaping yourself around the crowd. But when it's just you, you have to figure out what you actually like, what you actually believe. You start noticing things about yourself that you never paid attention to before. You learn what kind of music you really love when no one else is around to judge your playlist. You figure out which hobbies light you up, not because they're trendy, but because they make you feel alive. You discover how you like your coffee when you're not trying to match anyone else's order. And then there's the resilience. Being alone forces you to solve problems by yourself. You can't just call a friend to come over and fix the flat tire or talk you through a rough day. You have to dig deep and figure it out. That doesn't just make you more independent. It makes you more confident. Every time you handle something on your own, you prove to yourself that you can. You might not notice it in the moment, but those little wins stack up. They become a quiet kind of strength that doesn't need an audience. There's also this sharper self-awareness that comes with being your own company. You start noticing your patterns, what drains you, what energizes you, what you tolerate out of habit that you probably shouldn't. When you don't have the noise of other people's lives drowning out your own thoughts, you actually hear yourself. And sometimes what you hear surprises you. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. In fact, it can be uncomfortable as hell. It's like holding up a mirror and realizing there are parts of yourself you've been avoiding. But here's the thing, you can't work on something you won't look at. And when you finally see yourself clearly, you get to decide, what do I keep? What do I change? What do I let go? That kind of clarity is rare. Most people never get it because they're too busy filling every silence with someone else's voice. You also start to learn the difference between needing people and wanting people. Needing people means you feel incomplete without them. Wanting people means you've learned how to be complete on your own, but you'd still like to share that life with someone. That's a big difference. When you operate from want instead of need, your relationships change. They stop being about filling a hole in your life, and they start being about adding to something that's already whole. And then there's the independence. I don't need anyone ever kind of independence. That's just a wall in disguise. I'm talking about the kind of independence that comes from knowing you can handle life, and that if someone leaves, it won't shatter you. That's freedom, because you're no longer clinging to people out of fear. You're choosing them. The truth is, these superpowers don't always feel like superpowers when you're developing them. They feel like long nights and awkward dinners alone and weekends where the only voice you hear is your own. But over time, you realize you've been building a foundation, a solid one. And that foundation will hold you up in ways you can't even imagine yet. Because when the right people do come along, you'll meet them not from a place of emptiness, but from a place of strength. And that changes everything. One of the hardest things about going through a season of no friends is figuring out how to start again. You've been on your own for a while. You've built your routines, maybe even your walls. And now the idea of putting yourself back out there feels risky. And if we're being honest, it's not just about meeting people. It's about meeting people without losing yourself in the process. Because here's the trap. When you've been lonely for a long time, the first sign of attention can feel like water in the desert. You'll take it no matter the source. You'll overlook red flags because at least someone's talking to you. You'll bend your schedule, your values, even your personality, just to keep that connection alive. But here's the problem. You're not really building a friendship at that point. You're bargaining for one. And bargaining usually means paying with parts of yourself you shouldn't have to give away. That's why breaking the cycle isn't just about being open. It's about being open with boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're lines that show people how to treat you once they're in. Without them, you'll find yourself right back where you started, except this time it's not just loneliness you're dealing with, it's exhaustion. So what does it look like to re-enter social spaces without desperation? It means you stop auditioning. You stop walking into rooms thinking, how can I make them like me? And you start thinking, do I actually like them? It means you let conversations breathe instead of trying to fill every silence with approval. It means you trust that the right connections don't need you to twist yourself into knots just to keep them. And here's something most people won't tell you. You don't have to start big. You don't have to throw yourself into giant social gatherings if that drains you. Start small. Maybe it's a hobby class. Maybe it's a conversation with that neighbor you've been nodding to for months. Maybe it's just being willing to say yes to one invitation instead of convincing yourself you'll be too awkward to enjoy it. The point is to start moving. Relationships rarely show up at your door. You have to give them places to find you. At the same time, you have to be okay with not clicking with everyone. That's not rejection. It's just alignment. Not every person you meet will be your person, and that's a good thing. It's a filter. It keeps you from wasting energy on connections that were never meant to grow. And if you've been alone for a while, you might need to relearn how to trust people. Not all at once, but little by little. Give them pieces of your story. See how they handle them. Pay attention to whether they respect your boundaries or push against them. Notice if you feel lighter or heavier after spending time with them. That's your gut talking. Listen to it. Here's the part that takes the most patience, letting relationships develop at their own pace. We live in a world that wants everything fast, fast food, fast answers, fast connections. But real trust doesn't work that way. You can't microwave it. And if you try to, you usually end up with something half-baked and disappointing. Breaking the cycle without breaking yourself means being willing to walk away from anything that costs your peace, even if it means sitting in loneliness a little longer, because the wrong company will make you lonelier than being alone ever did. So yes, open your life to new people. Yes, say yes more often than no. but never at the expense of the person you've worked so hard to become. Because protecting your peace is how you make room for the right people to stay. There's a moment when you realize that this thing you've been carrying, this label of woman with no friends, doesn't actually have to be a scarlet letter. It's just a description. It's not your destiny. It's not your entire story. It's just a snapshot of a chapter you happen to be in right now. And the day you decide to own that chapter instead of hide it is the day the story changes. For a long time, I fought against it. I tried to downplay it, tried to make excuses when people asked about my social life, tried to pretend I was just too busy or focusing on myself. But the truth was I was embarrassed because somewhere along the way, I had absorbed the idea that having no friends was proof that I was unworthy. And if that was true, then telling anyone about it felt like handing them the verdict. But here's what I've learned. Shame thrives in secrecy. The more you hide your reality, the heavier it feels. The moment you speak it out loud, without self-pity, without apology, it loses some of its power. You stop flinching every time it crosses your mind. You stop letting it define the way you walk into a room. And when you own it, something else happens. You start to see it differently. You start to realize that this season has taught you things that people in constant company might never learn. You've learned how to be okay on your own. You've learned how to listen to yourself. You've learned how to stand in a space without shrinking just to make other people comfortable. That's not nothing. That's growth. Owning your story also means using it, not as a shield to push people away, but as a bridge to connect with the ones who need to hear it. You'd be amazed at how many people are quietly carrying the same experience, but are too afraid to say it out loud. The second you go first, you give them permission to drop the act. And that's how real connections begin, not in the polished, curated moments, but in the raw me too moments. This doesn't mean you make your loneliness your whole identity. It means you stop running from it. You acknowledge that it's part of your journey, but it's not the destination. You can speak about it without shame because you know it's not permanent. You can hold it without letting it hold you. There's a strength that comes from owning your story, because when you do, you stop letting other people write it for you. You stop chasing relationships just to prove your worth knowing. You stop agreeing to roles that don't fit just so you won't be alone. And you start living like your presence is valuable whether the room is full or empty. Here's the reality: people will always have opinions. Some might hear a woman with no friends and think they know what that means. That's fine, let them. They're only seeing a headline, and you're the only one who knows the whole article. You're not here to convince them otherwise. You're here to live it in a way that makes you proud, because the day you stop running from your own story is the day you start writing the next chapter. You know, when I look back at this whole journey, at the quiet mornings, the myths I believed, the strength I didn't realize I was building, the boundaries I learned to set, and the story I finally decided to own,